Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we unearth the fascinating stories hidden within mountains of information.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're plunging into the ancient world. Now, often when we think of that time, our minds jump straight to, the huge pyramids of Egypt or maybe the sprawling cities of Mesopotamia. They dominate the popular imagination.
They certainly do. Massive empires, incredible monuments, hard to ignore.
But what if we told you there was another Bronze Age superpower? One whose real strength, often kind of overlooked, wasn't just in its armies, impressive as they were, or its buildings, but in something much more subtle, something maybe ultimately more enduring, its mastery of communication.
Ah, yes. You must be talking about the Hittite Empire.
Exactly.
A civilization that, roughly from the 14th down to the 12th century BCE, cast this enormous shadow across the Near East.
Huge area, right? Anatolia.
Oh, absolutely. From the Aegean coast right across that vast central plateau of Anatolia, all the way to the edges of Mesopotamia and down into the Levant. A major player.
And despite their military might, their famous battles, their legacy, maybe even their survival as a cohesive empire, really hinged on something often understated, didn't it?
It really did. It hinged on a level of administrative and, crucially, communicative sophistication that's often just not given the weight it deserves in historical accounts. We focus on the chariots, the wars.
Right, the Battle of Kadesh and all that. Exactly.
But the day-to-day running, the thing holding it all together, that was different.
Okay, so let's unpack that. That's our core idea for this deep dive. The Hittites didn't just luck into building an empire.
Not at all.
They actively sustained this huge multi-ethnic realm through an incredibly sophisticated system. Communication and record-keeping, almost ahead of its time.
You can argue that. It was remarkably developed.
And this system, we're arguing, was every bit as vital as their military power. Maybe even more fundamental to keeping things stable long-term.
That's a strong case to make, yes.
So this deep dive, we're exploring exactly how their strategic control over information, the flow of knowledge, orders, records, how that shaped their rise, their governance, and ultimately, their pretty dramatic collapse.
It's a fascinating story, and we've got some great perspectives guiding us. We'll be drawing a lot from Trevor Bryce's work, The Kingdom of the Hittites.
The foundational history.
Right. He lays out the administrative machinery, the treaties, the letters, gives us the factual bedrock.
Okay. And on top of that,
we're layering in a really interesting theoretical framework from Seth L. Sanders. He talks about this idea of a monopoly of communication.
Monopoly of communication, not just violence.
Exactly. He argues state power isn't just about having the biggest army, the monopoly on legitimate violence, as Weber put it. It's also, maybe even more so, about controlling what he calls semiotic technologies.
Semiotic technologies, meaning like writing systems, signs and symbols.
Precisely. Writing official languages seals the tools used to create and control meaning. It really shifts how you think about ancient states. It wasn't just force, it was information control.
That's powerful. And we have physical evidence too, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's where archaeology comes in. Insights from scholars like Hermann Gens and Dirk Paul Mielke are key. They've worked on the excavations, the cuneiform archives, the big monumental inscriptions.
So we can actually see it. The evidence on the ground.
We can literally see the physical proof of this communicative power. We can look at the tablets, the carvings on rock faces. It makes it real.
Okay. So our mission today, unpack how the Hittites deliberately designed and managed these writing systems, these communication networks.
Show how the pen, or maybe the stylus on clay, was just as mighty as the sword for them.
Yeah, and what that reveals about empire, information, control, maybe even lessons for us. So what does this all mean for understanding one of history's great, often overshadowed powers?
Let's find out.
All right, so to really get the Hittite genius for communication, we need to understand their home turf first.
Yep.
Where did this all start?
Central Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. Picture this high, vast plateau. It's ringed by mountains, which offer some protection, but it's also threaded through with these fertile river valleys.
A varied terrain.
Very. And crucially, its location made it a natural crossroads, almost a bottleneck, really. Connecting the Aegean world to the west, the Levant down south, and the really ancient, powerful civilizations of Mesopotamia over to the east. It was right in the middle of everything.
Okay, so being a crossroads, good for trade, I imagine.
A huge advantage for trade, yes. And also for military expansion eventually. It gave them access to really rich metal resources, tin, copper absolutely essential for making bronze.
The key military and economic material of the age.
Exactly. Bronze fueled their armies, their tools, their economy. And those river valleys, they provided grain reserves, enough to feed growing cities and, of course, armies. These are the basic building blocks.
But managing that kind of place, it sounds challenging too. If it's a crossroads, it's also maybe harder to control. Diverse people, difficult terrain.
That's the flip side, a massive challenge. Think about sending an urgent message, a royal decree, or coordinating troop movements across hundreds of miles.
Without phones or internet or even good roads everywhere.
Exactly. Over rugged mountains, through winding valleys. How do you maintain central control? How do you ensure loyalty from different ethnic groups spread across this vast area? It puts immense pressure on your communication systems from day one.
So the need for good, reliable communication wasn't an afterthought, it was fundamental.
It became glaringly obvious very early on. We see this with the first identifiable Hittite kings, rulers like Labarna, often seen as the founder and his successor, Hattusa I.
What did they do?
They were key in expanding Hittite influence, establishing the capital at Hattusa, which would become this nerve center for centuries. And crucially, even back then, they started recognizing the political power locked up in writing.
How so?
Well, take Hattusili soft. His reign really shows this dual approach. He campaigned militarily, expanding the kingdom.
The force part.
Right. But his campaigns weren't just fought. They were meticulously recorded in royal annals.
Ah, the communication part. More than just diaries.
Oh, much more. These annals are crafted narratives. They emphasize his strategic genius, divine favor. They're designed to legitimize his rule, to project an image of power and success. It's early propaganda, essentially.
And letters, too. You mentioned letters.
Yes, fascinatingly, we have diplomatic letters from him, like one to a guy named Tunia, ruler of Tikunani, a nearby kingdom. These show an early, very sharp awareness of the political value of written negotiation.
Not just a chat, but putting it in writing.
Exactly. It's formal, it's binding, or intended to be. It projects power and leaves less room for, let's say, convenient misunderstandings later.
That makes sense. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? This early period had its problems.
Far from smooth. This early recognition of communication's importance was kind of hammered home by moments of intense instability.
Like what?
Well, Mursili I, who came after Hattusili, pushed Hittite power even further. Amazingly, he campaigned down through Syria, took Aleppo, and sacked Babylon itself, a massive military achievement.
Wow.
But he was assassinated when he got back. And that triggered chaos, a period of internal conflict, civil war that nearly tore the fledgling kingdom apart.
And that highlighted the communication issue.
It starkly highlighted how fragile power is if it's not backed up by secure, reliable ways to communicate political decisions, maintain loyalty, and manage succession. Without that constant, authenticated flow of information, authority just dissolved, factions popped up, the whole thing nearly collapsed.
So these early kings, through success and failure, learned a critical lesson.
They absolutely did. Conquest was one thing, but holding on to it, building something lasting, that needed more than just a strong army.
It needed a system.
It needed a sophisticated system to formalize the games, manage things day to day, and bind this diverse, sprawling territory together. It set the stage for the empire's peak, where communication truly became the engine holding it all together.
Okay, so they learned the hard way they needed better systems. Then comes the imperial period, the Hittite New Kingdom. This is where things really take off, right?
Absolutely. The zenith. And right at the heart of this period, you have a figure who truly mastered both aspects. Suppiluliuma I, a master of the sword, yes, but equally a master of the stylus.
Suppiluliuma. Okay, so what defined his reign? More conquests.
Aggressive military campaigns, definitely. He really reshaped the political map of the Near East. But crucially, it was combined with incredibly adept diplomacy and a really deep strategic understanding of how to use communication as a tool of statecraft.
How did that work in practice, let's say, after a conquest?
Look at his campaigns in Syria.
Yeah.
He captured major cities like Aleppo and, significantly, Kadesh, a real strategic prize. But he didn't just leave soldiers there.
What else?
He integrated these areas. He used marriage alliances, marrying his daughters to vassal kings, for example, and critically, he used formal treaties.
Written treaties again.
Yes, but now on a much grander scale. These weren't just handshake deals. They were detailed, binding, written documents. They spelled out obligations, loyalty, mutual defense. It was about cementing control, establishing political reality through the written word.
Turning victory into stable administration.
Precisely. And his letters, his correspondence, we have a lot of it, often used Akkadian.
Why Akkadian, not Hittite?
That choice was strategic. Akkadian was the lingua franca of the entire Near East at that time, the common diplomatic language.
Like English today, maybe?
Sort of, yeah. By using Akkadian fluently in treaties and letters with Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, the Hittites weren't just participating, they were asserting themselves as equals, peers among the great powers.
So choosing Akkadian was a statement. We belong at the top table.
Exactly. It was a conscious linguistic choice that projected their status and let them navigate complex international politics effectively.
That's really smart. Not just adapting, but using language strategically. Did this continue after him, this focus on written communication for consolidation?
Yes, it did. Later powerful kings like Mursili II and Mu'tali II built on this foundation.
Mursili II, he had challenges too, right?
Yeah.
Rebellions.
He did. After his father, Suppiluliuma, died, there were widespread revolts. Mursili not only crushed them militarily, but also undertook a major reorganization of the provincial administrations.
More than just shuffling governors.
Much more. He focused on standardizing correspondence, ensuring reports flowed consistently from the provinces to the capital and directives flowed back out.
Why was that so important? Standardization.
Think about managing this huge, diverse empire. Tribute collection, military levies, reports on harvests or local unrest, you need consistent formats. You need information to be reliable and comparable. Standardization made the administration efficient, ensuring orders from Hattusa were understood and acted upon consistently everywhere.
Okay, that makes sense. And Mu'tali II, he's famous for?
The Battle of Kadesh, that epic showdown with Ramesses II of Egypt, a clash of superpowers.
Right, and the result was kind of a draw, wasn't it?
Militarily, arguably a stalemate. But what came after is just as significant. One of history's earliest surviving peace treaties.
The Treaty of Kadesh.
Exactly. And here's the kicker, linking back to communication. It was inscribed in both Egyptian hieroglyphs and Hittite cuneiform. Copies were exchanged and likely displayed publicly in both empires.
Wow. Why both languages? Just so each side could read it.
That was part of it, sure. But it was more than just translation. It was a performative act.
Performative? How so?
By writing it in both scripts, recognized by both powers, they were legitimizing the agreement in the eyes of both their own people and the wider world. It memorialized the settlement, invoked divine witnesses named in the text, and demonstrated their equal status. Imagine seeing that treaty text displayed in a temple. It's a powerful statement of order and stability.
Binding two empires with words, literally carved in stone or pressed into clay.
It's a perfect illustration of the symbolic and political power they invested in written agreements.
This all points to a really sophisticated administrative machine behind the scenes. Where was the control center, the engine room of this, well, clay empire?
The heart was undoubtedly the central bureaucracy in the capital, Hattusa, but it wasn't just one big office building.
No.
It was supported by a network of provincial archives, strategically placed in key administrative centers, like the one found at Sepenua, modern Ortaköy.
And these archives held
Thousands of tablets, legal codes, detailed economic records tracking grain, trade, resources, and just a staggering amount of correspondence, both royal and diplomatic. These weren't dusty storage rooms, they were active hubs.
proof of a highly developed scribal system.
Absolutely. Highly developed, highly trained, and remarkably efficient. Think about the appointment of viceroys in key cities like Carchemish or Aleppo in Syria.
What about them?
They weren't just military governors, they were crucial communication nodes. They combined political oversight with communicative control. Information flowed through them, orders from the king down, reports on troops, harvests, local issues, backup.
Like regional managers, but for an empire.
In a way, yes. They were intermediaries ensuring the whole system worked, connecting the center to the vast periphery. This entire network, Hattusa, the provincial archives, the viceroys, was the logistical heart, ensuring every corner could be reached, managed, and kept loyal.
Okay, this is really getting to the core of it now, this idea of a monopoly of communication.
Yeah.
It sounds like the Hittites weren't just using writing, they were actively controlling it strategically.
They absolutely were. And this is where Seth Sanders' framework is so helpful. He really pushes us to think beyond the traditional idea of state power.
Beyond just armies and force.
Right. The usual monopoly of legitimate violence idea. Sanders says, hold on, state power also rests, maybe even more fundamentally for some states, on a monopoly of communication, meaning actively controlling how things are communicated, where they're communicated, in what language decrees, treaties, public monuments are created. For the Hittites, this let them tailor messages for different groups, vassals, foreign powers, their own people, while always reinforcing imperial unity and their supreme authority.
So it wasn't just, oh, we have lots of languages here, we better cope. It was deliberate.
Absolutely deliberate, an active strategy of information control, not just reflecting diversity, but managing it through communication choices.
That changes everything. It's not passive, it's an active tool of power. Managing diversity, controlling the narrative.
Wow, precisely. Their administration worked in this incredibly multilingual environment. You had Hittite, of course, but also Luwian, Hurrian, Pellaeic, Hattic, various Anatolian languages, plus Akkadian for diplomacy.
A real melting pot.
Definitely. And they leveraged these different languages and scripts with remarkable strategic precision. It was about maximizing reach while keeping central control over every official message. They knew exactly which tool to use for which job.
Okay, let's break that down. What were the main linguistic tools in their communication toolkit?
Well, first, the big one internally, cuneiform Hittite, written in Mesopotamian cuneiform script, adapted for their own Indo-European language.
And that was used for?
Primarily domestic governance. This is the language of their law codes, their economic records. Think detailed accounts of trade, land grants, temple inventories, and those royal annals we mentioned, recording the king's deeds.
And the key thing here is consistency.
Standardization. It's critical. Across the different archives, Hattusa, Sapinua, others, the way the script looks, the paleography, and the way words are spelled, the orthography, is remarkably consistent.
Not accidental, you think?
Almost certainly intentional administrative unification. It meant a complex legal ruling or an order about troop movements written in Hattusa could be read, understood, and implemented the same way hundreds of miles away by a provincial scribe. That's vital for cohesion.
Okay, so Hittite for internal admin, then Akkadian.
Akkadian, as we said, the international language. The lingua franca of the entire late Bronze Age Near East.
So that was for?
Diplomacy. Treaties with the big powers, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, letters to vassal rulers outlining their duties. By using Akkadian, they weren't just communicating, they were operating as peers on the world stage. It signaled their status.
Got it. And the third one? The really visual one.
Hieroglyphic Luwian. This is quite different. It's a distinct script using pictographic and syllabic signs used to write Luwian, another Anatolian language closely related to Hittite.
And its use was specific.
Very specific, primarily reserved for monumental inscriptions. Think big public displays, rock reliefs like Karabel, sanctuaries like Yazılıkaya.
Not for everyday letters or accounts.
No. This was for public consumption, aimed at local populations, elites, visitors. It was visually striking, often combining images of kings or gods with text. It asserted royal presence and authority in a very public, lasting way, like giant billboards proclaiming, "The king was here, this land is his."
3 different systems, 3 different purposes. Hittite for home, Akkadian for abroad, Luwian for display. That's incredibly organized.
It is. And it all relied on a robust infrastructure to work.
Right. You need the people, the places, the system to manage all this.
Absolutely. The central archives in Hattusa coordinated everything, linking up with those provincial hubs like Sapinua. Managing that flow of information was a huge task.
Which means the scribes were key.
Hugely important. Scribal training must have been incredibly rigorous. Becoming literate in multiple languages and scripts, that's a highly specialized skill.
And probably kept within a loyal group.
It seems likely. Expertise was concentrated, probably among a loyal cadre trained in the capital or major centers. This ensured efficiency, but also control. Control over who could read, write, and interpret official communications.
So it wasn't just about sending messages, but ensuring they were authentic and controlled. How did they manage that?
Authentication was critical. Think about it. How do you stop someone forging a royal decree in a distant province?
Good question. Seals.
Exactly. Royal seals, cylinder seals, stamp seals, these were crucial. Documents, especially those moving vertically, say, from a viceroy up to the king, or orders going down, were sealed. That seal wasn't just a signature. It was the king's authority made tangible, pressed into the clay. It guaranteed authenticity.
making forgery difficult, if not impossible.
Very difficult. Control over producing the texts and authenticating them with seals was as important as the message content itself. And they likely monitored communication between vassal states, too, to stop them coordinating against the empire.
Wow. It's a complete system of information control, more than just record keeping.
Much more. It was performative, it was political theater, it was ideology.
Performative? How do you mean, like putting on a show?
In a sense, Hittite writing went beyond administration. It actively shaped perception and projected power. Take treaties again.
Okay.
They weren't just filed away. Often there were public readings. Copies were formally deposited in temples in the presence of the god statues.
Making it a sacred act.
Precisely. Imagine a ceremony where the treaty text is read aloud. It becomes a public oath, witnessed by gods and men, reinforcing its sanctity and binding nature. It's a performance of commitment.
And the royal annals. Not just history books.
Definitely not objective history. They recorded events, yes, but they framed them. Marsili II's annals, for example, constantly emphasized divine support for his actions. Victories weren't just due to good strategy. The gods were on his side.
Shaping the narrative of his reign.
Exactly. Building legitimacy, justifying actions, creating a specific historical memory that favored the king. It's curated history as political tool.
And the monumental inscriptions, the hieroglyphic Luwian ones, they were part of this too.
Absolutely. They physically transformed the landscape into a medium of communication.
Hattusa.
Placing these inscriptions along major roads, at city gates, near sacred sites, it created this visible, textual map of imperial authority. You couldn't travel far without encountering the king's name, his titles, his image.
Making power inescapable, written onto the land itself.
Exactly. It was a constant public assertion of Hittite control, embedding the monopoly of communication into the physical world people lived in. They didn't just rule the empire, they wrote it onto the landscape.
It's fascinating to think about these systems conceptually, this idea of controlling information.
Mm-hmm.
But let's ground it. Let's talk about the actual stuff, the archaeological evidence. How do we see this communication power in the ruins?
Right. This is where theory meets the dirt, literally. Archaeology lets us connect Sanders' abstract monopoly of communication with the tangible things the Hittites left behind. And Hattusa, the capital, is ground zero.
It wasn't just an administrative center, you said. It was also a stage.
A ceremonial stage, exactly.
Yeah.
A place where this communicative power was constantly performed and displayed.
So what have the digs at Hattusa actually turned up? What kind of volume were we talking about?
Within the royal citadel, the temple complexes, various buildings identified as archives, thousands upon thousands of cuneiform tablets. The sheer number is mind-boggling.
Wow. And what's on them?
Everything. Foundational treaties with foreign powers, those detailed royal annals, law codes covering all sorts of things, complex religious texts, rituals, omen reports, and importantly, mostly in Hittite and Akkadian.
Reflecting that dual focus, internal and external communication.
Perfectly. Internal governance in Hittite, international diplomacy in Akkadian. These archives were the empire's brain, its memory, its command center, all rolled into one, constantly processing, storing, issuing information.
Incredible. And the city itself. Did the buildings speak?
Yeah.
The layout?
They did. The city's design wasn't just functional, it was communicative. Take the monumental gates. The Lion Gate, the King's Gate, the Sphinx Gate.
Impressive structures. Defensive.
Defensive, yes, but also powerful semiotic markers, symbols of imperial might and divine protection, adorned with huge sculptures, lions, sphinxes, warrior gods, and sometimes inscriptions. They broadcast royal authority to everyone entering or leaving.
Part of the daily experience of power.
Exactly. Placed along processional ways, integrated into the city's life, even seemingly mundane things like the huge underground grain silos.
Yeah. What about them?
Even they had associated administrative records found nearby. Tablets detailing grain collection, storage, distribution. It shows how even the city's basic economic lifeblood was tied directly to the king's oversight through written records. The whole city was a text communicating power and control.
Okay, that's Hattusa, the center.
Yeah.
What about out in the provinces? Did this system reach that far? Did they replicate this complexity?
They did, remarkably so, which really speaks volumes about their control. Sepanua Ortaköy is the prime example, a major provincial administrative hub.
And they found tablets there too?
Over 3,000 tablets, a massive archive for a provincial center.
3,000. What kind of things were recorded there, similar to Hattusa?
Similar, but with a provincial focus. Administrative orders coming down from the capital, detailed military reports going back up, local legal documents, religious texts, oracle inquiries. And interestingly, many documents are bilingual.
Bilingual.
Yeah.
Hittite and
Often Hittite and Hurrian, reflecting the mixed population in that region, which shows two things. The practical need to manage diverse populations, but also the imperial drive to maintain consistent administrative formats everywhere.
So information flowed both ways, top down and bottom up.
Definitely. Directives arrived from Hattusa. Governors at Sepenua sent back reports on local affairs, troop readiness, resource levels, potential trouble. We have tablets detailing requests for chariots or grain quotas or reporting on the movements of local tribes. It gives you this granular view of empire management on the ground.
Sepenua really shows the system wasn't just confined to the capital, it was a network.
A true network, mirroring Hattusa's practices, extending that communicative reach deep into the provinces.
Beyond the archives, what about those big public statements, the monumental inscriptions? You mentioned Karabel earlier.
Ah, yes, Karabel. A fantastic example of using hieroglyphic Luwian out in the landscape. It's this large relief carving cut right into a rock face.
Where is it?
In a mountain pass, on a really strategic road connecting the Asian coast with the Anatolian interior. It shows a ruler, probably Tarkasnau of Mira, a Western Anatolian vassal king under Hittite oversight, with his name and titles inscribed in Luwian hieroglyphs.
And the location was key.
Absolutely critical. Maximum visibility. Anyone using that major route traders, soldiers, locals would see it.
Even if they couldn't read the script.
Even then, the powerful royal image combined with the visible presence of writing sends a clear political message. This road, this territory is under control, under legitimate authority. It fuses geography, politics, and symbolic communication, turning the landscape itself into a statement of power.
Okay. And Yazılıkaya, that sounds different, more religious.
Yazılıkaya is different, yes. It's an open-air rock sanctuary very close to Hattusa. Not administrative, more ceremonial and religious, but still very much about political communication.
How so? What's depicted there?
Incredible processional reliefs carved into the rock walls, two converging lines of dozens of deities, male and female, meeting at the center.
A divine assembly.
Exactly, culminating in the meeting of the supreme storm god, Teshub, and the sun goddess, Hebad. And significantly, the Hittite king is often depicted among them, or receiving their blessing.
Visually linking the king to the gods.
Precisely. It visually fuses divine sanction with royal power. It says the king's authority is God-given, and hieroglyphic Luwian labels identify the gods and the king, creating this powerful mix of image and text.
And this was for public viewing, too.
Almost certainly. Probably used during major religious festivals, maybe the New Year festival. Large crowds would gather there, witness these ceremonies, see these images. It constantly reinforced the ideological basis of the king's rule, his divine right, his place in the cosmic order. Another form of public communication, using religion and ritual.
So if you put all this physical evidence together, Hattusa's archives and gates, Sepenua's provincial records, Karabel on the roadside, Yazılıkaya's sacred reliefs, what's the big picture?
The big picture shows that multilingual, multi-script communication strategy made real. Cuneiform Hittite in the archives for running the state, Akkadian for talking to other powers, hieroglyphic Luwian for broadcasting power visually on monuments and sacred sites.
Function and symbol working together.
Inseparable. Administration and symbolic messaging, two sides of the same coin, constantly reinforcing each other. And notice the placement.
Where the messages appeared.
Right. Strategically placed along routes of movement, city gates, highways, ceremonial centers, intersecting with people's daily lives. And think about the materials.
Stone versus clay?
Exactly. Stone inscriptions offered permanence, a public statement for the ages. Clay archives held incredible detail but were fragile, vulnerable. That difference becomes tragically important later on.
Okay, so we've built this picture of an incredibly sophisticated communication system. Centralized, multi-layered, using different scripts for different jobs. The backbone of the empire.
Its brain, its memory, its nervous system, all woven together.
But as strong as it seemed, it wasn't invincible. Let's talk about the unraveling. How did this system, which was such a strength, eventually collapse? Did its strengths hide weaknesses?
That's the sobering part. It absolutely did. Sanders' model about monopolies of communication also suggests their potential fragility. Despite all its sophistication, the Hittite system was, in some ways, inherently brittle.
Brittle? How? What were the main weaknesses?
Well, first, the geography again. Those mountains, those distances, they always made information flow relatively slow, potentially inconsistent, especially out on the edges of the empire. A message could take weeks.
Right. No instant messaging back then.
Definitely not. And second, that very centralization that made it efficient in peacetime, concentrating archives, scribal knowledge, decision-making in Hattusa,
Yes.
that created a massive single point of failure. If something happens to the center, the whole system is jeopardized. Sanders' model predicts this. Centralized communication monopolies are powerful when stable, but incredibly vulnerable if the center gets knocked out.
So if Hattusa falls or is even just cut off,
Yeah.
the whole administrative memory, the command structure just collapses.
Pretty much. Imagine losing the central server and all the IT staff and all the backups simultaneously. The empire loses its ability to record, command, coordinate, react. A brilliant design for control, but fragile under severe stress.
And that stress started building up. Political problems, military threats.
Immensely. From the late 13th century BCE onwards, the pressure ramped up. Internally, you had major power struggles. Trevor Bryce highlights the damaging succession dispute between Urhiteshub and his uncle Hattusili III.
Civil war, basically.
Yes, which fractured elite loyalties. If you're a governor out in a province, who do you obey? Whose orders are legitimate? It directly disrupted communication lines. Trust evaporated.
And without trust, orders get ignored, reports don't get sent.
Exactly. Consistency breaks down, authority erodes. At the same time, external threats were multiplying. Assyria was resurgent in the east, pressing on Hittite territories and trade routes in Syria.
Cutting off resources and communication channels.
Potentially, yes. And in the west, you have increasing disruption from groups collectively, somewhat mysteriously, called the Sea Peoples. They seem to have raided coastal areas, disrupted shipping, maybe pushed inland.
So the physical routes for messages, roads, sea lanes were becoming unsafe.
Increasingly compromised. If messengers can't get through reliably, if towns are being sacked, the whole administrative system starts to seize up no matter how well designed it is on paper. The physical arteries were being blocked.
A perfect storm. Political instability, military pressure, and then environmental problems too. Famine.
Yes, adding another devastating layer. We have textual evidence, particularly from the reign of the last known king, Suppiluliuma II. Desperate appeals to Egypt for huge shipments of grain.
Indicating widespread famine.
Seems likely. And there's supporting evidence from archaeobotany studies of ancient plant remains suggesting declining crop yields in central Anatolia around this time. Maybe prolonged drought, climate change. The cause is debated, but the impact seems clear.
But how does famine directly hit the communication network? Seems unrelated at first glance.
It hits it hard. Fewer resources means the empire can't support the large number of specialized scribes needed. Training stops, perhaps.
Can't afford the personnel.
Right. Courier capacity probably drops to fewer horses, less manpower available. Messages get slower, less reliable. Even the basic material, clay for tablets, might become harder to process and distribute if resources are stretched thin.
And loyalty. If the center can't provide food.
Exactly. Provinces become focused on survival, on securing their own resources. Dependence on Hattusa weakens, and so does loyalty. Why obey orders from a distant capital that can't even assure your grain supply? The communicative bond phrase as the material bond breaks.
It all starts to fall apart, and the archaeology, does it show this collapse clearly?
Unmistakably. The destruction layer at Hattusa itself is stark evidence. Thick layers of ash and rubble containing thousands of burnt, fragmented tablets.
The archives burning.
The empire's memory literally going up in smoke. It's not just physical loss, it's the erasure of the administrative knowledge that held everything together. Catastrophic.
A total system crash, like wiping the hard drive.
A very good analogy. And out in the provinces, places like Sapinua seem to have been abandoned relatively abruptly. Their archives are incomplete, as if the scribes just stopped mid-sentence, walked away, or were overwhelmed.
The whole network just stops.
It seems so. And those monumental inscriptions, they become much rarer in the final decades. The ones we do find are often less elaborate, less standardized in script and style. It signals a collapse in central control, in the ability to project that unified imperial message across the landscape. The voice of the empire was fading.
So by around 1180 BCE, when the empire effectively collapses, that monopoly of communication is well and truly broken.
Right.
What happens then? What are the consequences of that silence?
The glue is gone. Without Hattusa's central authority, regional rulers pop up, establishing their own local power bases.
Going their own way.
Pretty much. They often revert to using local languages and scripts, like varieties of Luwian, sometimes still using hieroglyphs, but in distinctly regional styles. The imperial standards cuneiform Hittite, Akkadian for diplomacy, largely disappear.
So the Neo-Hittite states that emerge later, they're different.
They preserve some cultural traditions, art styles, religious ideas, but the unified administrative and communication structure of the empire, that's gone. The political and cultural coherence dissolves into a patchwork of smaller, independent kingdoms. The loss of the communication monopoly went hand in hand with political fragmentation. The empire lost its unified voice, and then it ceased to exist.
It's so clear listening to this. The Hittite Empire's survival, its very identity, depended just as much on mastering communication as it did on winning battles.
If not more, arguably. From their rise through that imperial peak and right into the final collapse, controlling language, controlling the medium, controlling the flow of information was the absolute glue.
Holding that vast, diverse empire together, we really saw Sanders' monopoly of communication in action. They consciously built this incredible infrastructure of power through information control.
Every tablet, every seal, every monument, it wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate strategy to reinforce authority, to create unity, a core part of their statecraft, their culture.
But that strength, that centralization, was also its Achilles heel, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Over-centralizing everything in Hattusa made the system efficient, yes, but incredibly fragile. That single point of failure.
And when that heart faltered under war, famine, internal conflict.
The arteries were severed, the archives burned, the roots were cut, the scribal knowledge dispersed. The whole system just collapsed, contributing directly to the empire's rapid dissolution.
It really feels like a timeless lesson, doesn't it? Something that goes way beyond the Bronze Age.
I think so. It's a reminder for any state, ancient or modern. Power isn't just about force or economics. It absolutely depends on maintaining coherent, trusted, functioning channels of communication.
The Hittite story ends like it began, with words. Or maybe with the loss of words.
In that silence after Hattusa burned, after the archives turned to dust, the empire's unity dissolved. Its voice was gone.
It's a powerful reminder. Communication isn't just a tool for governance. Maybe it's the lifeblood of governance, of any complex society.
And once that stops flowing, even the mightiest state can unravel.
So thinking about this deep dive into the Hittites, their communicative genius and their ultimate silence, what does that make you wonder about our own world? Our incredibly connected, information-saturated world today. Something to think about.
Indeed. Until next time.